The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Supply Management Technologies Benefits webinar. We are just about to start. We're just going to wait a couple of minutes to let a few more people join the webinar. So if you bear with us for a couple of minutes, then we'll get kick-started. Thanks very much. Great. Thanks everybody for your patience while I wait for a couple more people to join. We'll kick-start the session. First of all, a quick introduction. My name is Lance Young. I'm the CEO of Status, recently rebranded from State of Flux Technologies. We'll spend about half an hour, 35 minutes of your time this afternoon, just taking through with you some of the highlights from our latest global SRM research, what that means specifically for technology and the trends we're seeing in technology around supplier management, and then finally calling out some of the key benefits that we're seeing as well and key changes we're seeing. As I said, we'll run for about 35 minutes and then we'll leave about 10-15 minutes at the end for any Q&A that you've got. During the course of the webinar, the lines are going to be muted just to cut down on background noise, etc. But if you do have any questions as we go through, please just use the question board on the right-hand side of your screen there. We'll either try and address some of those questions during the session as they pop up, but the very worst, we'll answer them at the end of the session as well. Okay, so let's kick off here. So first of all, just to put things into context, many of you will know that once a year we conduct an annual review of supplier management. Last year we launched the findings from that in November, December, and it was the result of over 500 companies completing a survey, about 650, 700 people across 6 different areas of supplier management. Those 6 areas are pretty classic areas, covering everything from business drivers and values. So what are your objectives, your goals, the reason for conducting supplier management, engagements and stakeholder management. So how do you engage with those 3 key stakeholder groups, which are leadership, peers and suppliers. Governance and process, so looking at those core governance and process aspects covering risk, contract, performance, relationship, how you structure it, what the models look like, and how well people deploy it. People and skills, everything from organizational design through to competency, through to training, technology, and then finally relationship development culture. A few key points to call out here before we dive into the technology aspects of the agenda this afternoon. First of all, what we saw across the board was that leadership group, which is depicted by the green line across the board, actually stretched their lead versus the fast followers and followers. So the average for a leader last year was 3.7, and now it's 4.1. In particular, they've got stronger in around the business drivers and the values area, whilst increasing across all the other areas as well. The next 10% of the population come as fast followers, and again we've seen some improvements there. But with the majority of people, we've seen them stay relatively static. So that follower community is the next 20%. So the 3 lines on here show the top 40% of supplier management organizations. It doesn't depict the next 60%, which are below the red line. What we saw as well was some improvements around business drivers and values, a constant improvement on governance and process. People and skills improved, however, we actually saw a drop in the training aspect. So people's definitions of roles and profiles was being done well, but training had dropped. Technology was the only area that had dropped overall from last year to this year, and relationship and development had stayed the same. And importantly, within information and technology, we feel that that drop has occurred from a couple of different reasons, which we'll talk about in the subsequent slides here. But important to put things all in context, because as we go through here, we'll see the importance of process and people as well as technology. Now, tied to those 6 pillars, we've looked at those different drivers or those things that are important from an organization perspective when it comes to supplier management. Along the bottom of this graphic, you'll see the different things that organizations are looking to achieve in terms of supplier management. No surprise, it ranges from cost reduction, cost avoidance on the left, all the way through to quality and service improvements, innovation, joint service developments, improving quality and the like as well. What we saw in the survey was quite important, was there was a big gap between those business drivers, which you can see in the top blue line, and actually the benefits being reported. And on average, there was a gap of 30%. Now, cost reduction, cost avoidance, we were doing pretty well. Traditional core areas for procurement and the business to focus on. They're committing to a certain business driver and they're also realizing it. Where the biggest gaps were around sales and revenue growth, supporting improved profit margins, improving speed to market, getting access to scarce resources, sustainability and CSR goals, as well as innovation and joint product development as well. Now, these things are important from a technology perspective, because what we've seen with leading organizations, not only do they deploy technology, but they also target that technology around those business areas that are critical for organizations. They're also important as well because we've seen some pretty major and public both success stories and failures over the last year. Organizations like Roche and P&G and Nestle continue to drive more value from their supplier organizations, driving particular innovation with P&G, and their Connect and Develop program, basically delivering over 50% of their innovation from third parties, through to the other side of things where you've got organizations like Tesco, Primark and Boeing, etc., suffering from either quality failings or financial criticism and other things that fundamentally affect organizations' share price. Now, at the same time, some of these organizations are doing good stuff as well, but what gets called out in the press and what affects organizations' reputation is what they're doing with suppliers. So putting this all into context, supplier management is critical, it is important. One of the main areas that organizations are lagging is around technology, and that's what we're going to spend the rest of the webinar talking about, is what organizations can do to basically improve technology and why they need to do it sooner rather than later. So taking a quicker look at technology here. So what's the current state look like? Well, as I said before, there's been a drop in technology enablement from 2013 to 14, and only 8% of respondents are basically using information technology significantly. You can see that called out in the graphic at the bottom here, where the fast followers and leaders are basically deploying technology more than that follow group. And remember, this doesn't include the 60% of the organizations that are below the line as well. There has been a bit of improvement from last year, and that not at all and don't know, in that more people have moved into the not much bucket, but there's still a significant gap to be closed out in terms of the use of technology as well. So what are organizations doing if they're not basically using technology, and what are the barriers that they're facing as well? So what we found from the research, that the main areas where people are expressing concerns are around the lack of functionality, that systems are disparate and not integrated, information is inaccessible not only to suppliers but also to key stakeholders, and that information is not up to date. Systems aren't scalable as well, so they're point solutions that basically aren't scalable. And what we found as well is around about 81% of organizations are using Excel to manage their supplier management programs. Now, whilst that's inevitable in the procurement guys and girls that love Excel, and there's no stepping away from that. What we're seeing now is that in the market there are tools and products available that people can use to be able to respond and manage their suppliers. And there's a number of benefits the organization's considering doing this as well. So what are people using outside of Excel, and what areas are they enabling? On this, all of the different areas that can be enabled using technology. They range from contracts and performance through to product lifecycle management, quality management, risk, intelligence, a whole raft of different areas that technology exists to help enable the processes to achieve your overall objectives. Where we're seeing the greatest penetration is around contracts. 58% of organizations have got technology in place to manage contracts. Now, in our research, there's certain sectors that basically are deploying contracts more robustly. In particular, in basically the public sector, there's a higher penetration. The next highest area is performance. That doesn't surprise me either. It's the highest area where organizations look to exchange information, and so using everything from Excel through to more deeper solutions are quite important as well. What becomes interesting as you take the stage further is there's a big drop now down to the next level, which is program management, risk management, quality management, and then some surprising areas like innovation, sustainability, product lifecycle management, where there's very little technology enablement at the minute. What we're saying tied to this is that you consider that these are the 12 areas that basic organizations can use to enable processes, is that most organizations are finding a sweet spot of around 4 to 5 areas that they're enabling. We believe that if you try to enable too many areas, 10, 11, 12 areas, you're trying to stretch yourself too far to achieve your areas of focus or areas of differentiation. And so most organizations are looking for a deep dive in that 4 to 5 area sweet spot. Notably as well, there's quite a few organizations that don't have any enablement at all. Now, if you look at the level below this, during the research this year, we looked to analyze which actual modules delivered the most amount of benefit. Now, the first and important thing is that organizations that have technology in place typically have higher post-contract benefit delivery. So those leading organizations that I discussed before, basically the top 10%, typically get above average post-contract savings, anywhere between 6 to 8% on average, and those organizations typically have technology in place to support that as well, as a straight line correlation. And I'll come back to that in a little bit as well. But if you take that a stage further, we did a little bit of further analysis to see which modules delivered the most amount of benefit. And it was a little bit surprising because, to be quite honest, we kind of figured that contracts performance would be the areas that would maybe drive improved performance, improved delivery against SLAs, improved commercial commitments. But what actually came out was those organizations, the leading organizations that basically were delivering greater post-contracts, actually were getting greater success from risk, relationship, innovation, and CSR and sustainability. Now, our hypothesis behind this is that those organizations that are delivering greater benefits here are also very, very clear about what they're trying to achieve with their suppliers and their supply chain. As an example, if you're P&G and you're effectively one of your key objectives is innovation, then what you're looking to do is to align people, process, technology, and performance management of the whole cycle behind that around innovation. And that's what we believe is happening. So innovation is important to you because you're in a kind of a sector that drives and requires new product development. Then that's what you should look to do, align your suppliers around those processes, technology, and people capability skills that enable that to happen. The other thing that we've seen in research is that what technology enables you to do is basically improve adoption of core processes. What we looked to analyze was the percentage of key suppliers that had robust processes in place. So those core processes that you look to use to manage your suppliers. Core processes of performance, contract, risk, and the same is true for relationship and innovation as well. So along the bottom axis here, you can effectively see the percentage of key suppliers with robust processes in place. And you see a potential ramp up that's very tightly linked to the amount of technology that's basically deployed as well. In particular when it comes to contracts and in the latter stages in around risk. So there's a straight line correlation between technology deployment and the adoption of processes. Key here is the fact that I think organizations do a good job of getting processes in place with their, maybe their top 10, 15% of their key suppliers. So if your key supplier program has got 25 to 50 suppliers in, which is the standard, then you'll get 5, 10 suppliers where you've got good adoption of best practice process in place. But unless you've got technology in place or some level of mandate, you're not able to ensure that adoption happens, both in terms of a positive perspective, giving people the tools, the techniques to be able to share information as well as basically collaborate with people, but also just from a pure reporting, recognition, compliance perspective as well. Now, what we're seeing is that there's been an incredibly rapid development of technology over the last few years, and what's either scary or exciting, depending on your point of view, is that that's moving in even quicker than it's done in the past. It's moving incredibly quickly in the sort of B2C sectors, and now that's starting to filter across into B2B. There's a couple of key drivers that are basically being linked to that. Basically, the user experience is improving drastically from the systems that were built and deployed in the late part of an early part of the century. The user experience is much more intuitive. You've got social and mobile becoming prevalent, making information easy to digest, whether it be quality information, logistical information, alerts when there's a typhoon or a flood happening in a particular region, how that impacts your suppliers, the ability to track products as they move from location to location, for consumers to be able to know where their products come from by using your your scanner on your iPhone to be able to locate on a packaging product where the products come from. And so information is becoming more ubiquitous, and visibility is becoming key and core. Not only is that true for the consumer, but also it's true for organizations, whether that be the quality departments or production control or finance. Accessibility is following a mantra of anyone, anytime, anywhere. Now, obviously, you're going to put in your relevant controls, your visibility rights, but now that the mantra is more about what you don't share as opposed to what you do. Following a classic waterfall approach where everything is shared and you're only deciding what you don't share after that. And technology is basically driving a big part of that, because before, being able to manage this type of information using a spreadsheet or using SharePoint or using basic email functionality was good, but now it's not good enough. The other thing that's linked to this as well, the cost to do this is coming down. I make reference here to SaaS, cloud. The basic cost for implementing, running, operating software platforms is coming down drastically, and the ability to be able to manage and basically use it on more of an on-demand basis is becoming a lot more. It's becoming easier for organizations to do. So these different trends are driving basically a greater adoption of technology because they're intrinsically linked to benefits. You know, that benefit of being able to access information, the benefit of being able to create virtual teams, the benefit of being able to, you know, have secure information when you want it, the benefit of being able to collaborate based upon that information as well. The key thing that sits behind this as well is that technology does two things. You know, it basically allows you to, you know, automate processes, make them more visible. But equally so, what becomes very important is the information that's managed as well. Now, what we saw in our research is that the information that's managed, you'll see on this chart, is typically, you know, managed better by leaders. So they're the dark blue line. Across every area of information that's shared, they share more information. The number one area is supplier performance data. It's been the number one area for the last few years that we've been running the survey. Second, third, you know, company strategy, forecast information, strategy relationship with them. If you dig below the data as well, you'll see the biggest gap between leaders and fast followers and followers are in those areas of information which are more forward-looking as well. So as you look to consider the information that you're sharing, how much information you want to be able to share as well, what I would look to do is basically, you know, if you want to manage information, use information that's going to be more forward-looking as opposed to information that's maybe backward-looking. That's what I would concentrate on as well. And then linked to that, what we're seeing is that some more trends are starting to emerge as well. So trends around data, so being able to, you know, they tend to be grouped around four areas. One is the definition of data, the design of that data, how you display it, and then how you distribute it as well. I've touched upon that a little bit already, but some of the sub-elements and things that are happening within here range from, you know, dynamic and static data points coming from multiple different points. So not only is information captured internally, but it's captured increasingly from, you know, from third parties. And again, the price points for these data points is dropping significantly. So it's important that you're basically very specific about the data you require, where you're looking to get it from, and then not committing to deals that basically tie you in for too long, unless it's tied to any kind of you know, linkage to price points dropping, because they will and continue to drop. Managing and visualizing the data becomes important, and then taking that data and then taking a step further. A step further being, you know, basically predictive analysis, machine learning of activities and information that's coming through, you know, providing that information in one place, you know, displaying it in one place so that there's one source. And also there being consistency and validation of data points as well. For us, what we see as key as well is that, you know, data is nothing without action, and that's probably the biggest thing for us is that, you know, as you look to, you know, manage, manipulate, and understand data, then what is the so what? What is the output? What are the actions? What are the triggers that are created? What are the alerts that are created as well? And therefore, what are the actions that people need to take as a result of data points changing as well? So if we pull this all together, then, you know, we see there's quite a lot of benefits dropping out of this. The biggest thing for us is that we're seeing a straight line correlation between SRM leaders and technology deployment. A reminder there that leaders are seeing 6 to 8% in terms of, you know, basic benefits from post-contract benefits from SRM as well. We're also seeing productivity improvements as well. You know, research by people like, you know, by PwC, by McKinsey, shows that social collaboration using platforms basically drives anywhere between 10 to 22% in productivity improvements from your team. So take that whichever way you want. Either you can get 20% more from the team you've got at the minute, or you can potentially look to redeploy people once you've got yourself a strong technology solution in place. Some of the other things that are basically called out here that are important. There's basically technology enables you to have a focal point, one place for all your supplier management activities. It automatically embeds best practices. If you've got great supplier management technology in place, then it should replicate good and best practices in a consistent way. One thing that's not often talked about much is the supplier experience as well. What this enables you to do is make sure the supplier has a great experience as well. If you're searching for and want to be a customer choice, that becomes imperative as well. There's also a mantra here around compliance and regulatory requirements as well. With a lot of Fed, FCA requirements are pushing things forward in the financial service sector. We're seeing the same with MiFID and other things pushing for regulatory and audit compliance. We talked about the virtual team and how they're pulled together in one place, universal access, anytime, anywhere, and ultimately, what technology enables you to do is not only give you a solution that's scalable, but it can be done quickly nowadays. Basically, solutions are adaptable, flexible, and can be deployed and scaled pretty quickly as well. Layered upon this, there's some areas that are showing greater benefits than others. For these areas we called out here from our research, these were the areas that organizations saw as having the greatest impact. Still some high impact in some of the areas around contract and risk, and then finally in those areas of virtual teams and productive teams as well. I think the key thing is, as you look down this list as well at benefits, is that basically, most organizations was basically showing over 50% of benefits from technology deployment in these different areas. So it wasn't organizations saying, yes, maybe. There's a real positive vote for the benefits associated from supplier management as well. So what do we look to do about that? From our perspective, there's a couple of different things that organizations should be looking to do. Probably the overlaying message that I'd like to leave with people is to really focus on moving fast and looking ahead. I think in the market there's a lot of very dynamic solutions that are becoming available, both at the biggest and the macro level, but also some very unique niche solutions that can respond to areas that you want to differentiate around. I think being aware of what exists in the market is imperative, and I know from personal experience that that's going to change very rapidly over the next couple of years as well. So we step back from that. What should you look to do? Well, first of all, understand what your company goals are. We've talked about that at the start. If innovation is one of your goals, then what you should be looking to do is to consider what technology can do to help you accelerate innovation. There's a couple of different ways that can be done, but that's what I'd be looking to do. Understand what areas of differentiation, focus, and then applying technology to that. This will help with your business case. Again, the cost to implement technology shouldn't be as prohibitive as it's been in the past. Not only are there niche solutions out there, but the basic cost of entry is significantly lower than it's been in the past as well. I would concentrate on building capability, not just technology. Historically, the thinking was build it and they will come, and people built technology. People built and invested significant amounts of money in P2P systems, and basically, the actual capability behind that was questionable. So now I would basically turn that on its head. I would look at the capability and build that as well. And going back to this area of differentiation, I would go deep where you need to. So yes, you can quite happily give yourself a kind of a vanilla or a thin layer of supplier management, but nowadays then you can layer on top of it. It might be apps, it might be a bespoke niche solution that you want to plug into what you're doing around supplier management. And in turn, because integration is becoming easier, you can create a one-stop shop for supplier management. One place for everyone to go for supplier management. By the way, that doesn't have to mean one solution. It can be a group of solutions integrated together in one place. Technology as well can be used as a change agent. There's nothing quite like a go-live date to create levels of change. And equally so, it can help with governance, compliance, and adoption. With that in mind, it's important to not only link to the business, but also link to those key initiatives at a business level, and that will help with adoption. We have seen, with our clients, they've tended to link their technology and their initiatives to a business initiative. It might be sustainability. So one of the core objectives is sustainability, CSR. Then what are you doing with that with your suppliers? How can you automate that, make that? How can you draw maybe third-party data into a central place where you're managing all your suppliers? And that can be very, very powerful of supporting the business case, but also the adoption. And then finally, for us, is basically creating an environment where, procurement, the business, subject matter experts, some quality, production control, finance, can all connect with each other, can collaborate, and most importantly, create some value that's linked back to the business objectives as well. So that rounds up the webinar for this afternoon. Hopefully what I've been able to do to you is to call out some of the key trends we've seen from our research, from our experience, what we're seeing in the market in terms of it moving incredibly fast, and then also to be able to call out some of the specific benefits that are linked to technology across a number of different areas, both from a financial perspective, but also from a more qualitative perspective as well. So what I'll do now is I'll basically open to the floor for any questions that are coming through as well. So if you can just type your questions into the question bar on the right-hand side, then we can go through those questions. Okay, good. First question coming in here. Okay, so the first question here is, how can technology be leveraged for program management of SRM? So what we've seen basically with any sort of supplier management program, there tends to be two types of program. One which is basically where supplier management is an embedded activity within a team. The other side is where your SRM is basically a new program. When it's a program of activity, where technology can often help in pure program management is to help with activity management and visibility of actions and governance that's happening. Now that can go further when you move into basically your ongoing supplier management activities, where a program management becomes inherent in the platform, and because it moves from being a program to being business as usual as well. Got another question here on the business case behind technology and how that flows through as well. So what we see, business cases tend to be very personal for organizations, the business case of technology. Every organization approaches it differently. So some organizations will look at it very granularly and look to basically say, well, okay, well, how many suppliers are going to be covered? What's the benefit that we're going to deliver? What's the cost against that delivery as well? And so what we normally help organizations with is both with the generic and qualitative input, but also with some of the specifics to work up the costs associated with technology, the incremental sort of benefits that we see organizations will get, maybe from increased adoption, scalability of a solution, productivity improvements as well. The other way of looking at the business case is often by looking at the case, well, typically technology is deployed and used most of your strategic suppliers. And those strategic suppliers, you'll be spending anywhere between 10 to 20 million, sometimes up to hundreds of millions with those organizations. And as I said before, the cost base for technology now, you could probably get yourself a supplier management tool that was going to cost you anywhere between, depending on how many modules you go for and how many suppliers, basically somewhere between £1,000 to £2,000 per supplier. Now put that in context. You're spending 100 million or 10 million or even $1 million with a supplier, and you've got a fully trained supplier manager who's maybe either solely managing that supplier or basically managing a couple of suppliers, and it's going to cost you £1,000 to £2,000 to basically enable that person with technology. It's a very low cost, I think, to play, especially when with many of these the suppliers, they're using CRM tools effectively to manage you as well. So there's a couple of different ways to look at the business case there as well. Can you say a bit more about using technology for supplier innovation? How is technology being used and applied in this area? What does it look like? So that's a good question. Now, the exciting thing about basically supplier innovation is that it's one of those areas that's readily available for organizations. Now, at the very, very simplest level, if you've got a sourcing platform at the minute that you're using, you can effectively create an RFI, and that RFI can effectively be fired out to suppliers and basically ask for their innovation. Now, if you take that a stage further, what you want to be able to do is create innovation briefs or innovation guidelines or innovation challenges, post them out to multiple different suppliers, both internal and external to your supply base. They come back in, they're rated, ranked, and then can be progressed on the technology platform that you're using as well. What we're doing with our platform is just that. We're basically enabling organizations to basically collaborate with their suppliers all in one place. Equally though, the platform can be used as a repository just to collect ideas. Often that is a criticism from suppliers, that there's no one place to basically collect ideas and innovation into one place. And that enables you to be able to rank and to manage and to maintain those ideas as well. Taking a stage further, there are crowdsourced solutions that are out there that basically go deep into particular sectors as well. So many of you that are maybe working in media will know that you can post on dedicated platforms to basically post out to individual contractors. You might have an innovation brief, a creative brief for a new product name, a new design logo, whatever it might be. You can post that brief out literally to thousands of individual contractors. They will respond to you basically indicating what they can effectively do and what they can respond to from a rate perspective, and then you can then decide who you want to use as well. So you've got 3 different main channels that you can follow there as well. The next question is, how important is mandate when rolling out a program to disparate SPRM groups in order to generate a single view for the business? It's a good question, actually, because this is more of a cultural question. Whenever we've got the mandate word in the question, it becomes more cultural. We've seen many organizations that do use a mandate. They use a policy, they use escalation, they use reporting, they use audits and compliance. But what we've seen over the last couple of years is an increased empowerment of teams, an increased approach where people are looking to kind of enable organizations with the right tools, templates, process so you get adoption in a more natural way as well. I would say from a technology perspective, that has also become easier as tools have become more responsive, more aligned to what's important from an experience perspective, both in terms of internal but also suppliers. So adoption is becoming easier as well. I think there's always going to be some level of your early adopters, fast followers, and laggards. But the laggard group, is getting smaller, and there's tricks that you can deploy to basically to address that as well, whether it be reward and recognition, whether or not it be organizational changes that can help support supplier management as well. I think going back to the first slide I showed as well, looking at those 6 pillars. It becomes important to kind of remember that SRM, supplier management, relies upon not one area to be successful, but relies upon all 6 areas to really be successful as well. Okay, great. I think we've come just about to the end of the questions. Unless there's any final questions, we'll close out the session for this afternoon. Thanks very much for your attention. If you've got any questions about supplier management or the research that we completed, feel free to drop us a line. You can still participate in that research. There's a benchmark pool of over 250,000 data points that we can benchmark and help you benchmark against. And equally so, from a technology perspective, we're open to be able to share some more in and around supplier management technology, what we've seen work, what we've seen not work so well as well. So thanks again for your time, and we look forward to speaking to you next time. Thank you. Bye now.